Hello everyone and welcome to our latest series of using the CATIA software. We hope that you are enjoying our videos frequently and you find it really helpful for implementing and using the CATIA software. However, I urge all of us to go through my previous videos as all the next and upcoming videos will be depending upon what we have learned in our previous videos. So once again, while using the CATIA software, we will go through the basics, and today we are going to learn which are the different commands and steps that we are going to use while developing a 2D drawing. So just simply right clicking on the CATIA software and using the open option, and you will have CATIA software that will be opened up. So going through the routine procedure, start mechanical design and then part design. And as you can see, the basic by default name, that is part 1. I can just simply name it as number 1 and we will click on OK. Once we click on OK, this is how the window pops up. It opens up in this manner. In video number 2, we have learned how to arrange a workbench in part design and what are the tools that are required. We do not need all the options that are available in the workbench, so do go through video number 2 and you will find out that which are the necessary tools that are required. However, as we are going to learn and go through the basics, we will now develop a 2D drawing, and to develop a 2D drawing we need to open up one of the planes. So how to open up planes we have learned in video number 3. Just simply we will go on plane YZ and we will then use the sketch options. The sketch options itself has two options, that is the sketch and the position sketch. I urge everyone to use the position sketch option, which will be really helpful for us in finding out which is the position and in which position do we have to use a particular software part. And we can just simply, we do not need to reverse edge. Horizontal axis H is in the positive direction and so is the vertical axis V in the positive Y direction. Just simply right clicking on OK. This is how one of the planes will now open up. This is the YZ plane that will be opened up. Again, once we are in the sketch option, we have discussed which are the different tools that are required for us to develop a 2D drawing. As we can see, the sketch tools option, which I have urged you to keep in the workspace area, as it always gets expanded and may well be in the risk that it might hide one or two options as well. So try to be on the safer side and keep in the workspace area. It won't matter too much in the work process. However, these are the options that we have learned in the previous video. Today we are going to learn how to actually develop a 2D drawing. First of all, before developing a 2D drawing, my request to you is that you need to know the basic geometries of different parts. That is of a circle, rectangle, triangles and ellipses, lines, points, etc., which are the basics that we need to learn. Guys, while developing a particular 2D drawing, always we have to make sure that it is enclosed, that is, it has a certain area. We can't keep it open up. As we can see, if I just draw a particular 2 lines and if I keep it in this very particular manner, and I will show you, if I draw another one here and if I then close up, here we can see it is drawing, but it is not a particular drawing that could be transferred into a 3D model. Why? Simply because we have to make sure that there are 2 lines passing through every single point. That is the basic that you need to learn. There should be 2 lines passing through every single point, at least 2 points. It is a 2D drawing, so 2 lines have to be passing on. So you can clearly see there are 2 lines passing from this very particular point, whereas there are no lines passing from this very particular point. So another point here, we can see there are no lines passing through, 2 lines passing through this point. So which therefore means that it is an open sketch. Now what does an open sketch means? It doesn't have a particular area, that is, it doesn't define a particular geometry. This particular diagram is neither a triangle, neither a quadrilateral. It is actually absolutely nothing. It is just two simple lines which are in connection with one another. However, it doesn't constitute an area, so we can't develop a 3D drawing. So always make sure that to every single point there are two lines passing through. So I will once again use the profile option, and once I click on profile options, it creates a series of lines. And here we can see, and to close the profile option, if you want to close it, you have to press the escape button that is present on your keyboard. So once you press the escape button, we escape to that particular option, and here we can see, and there is a triangle that has been created in the workspace area. Now it really defines a geometry because we have two lines passing through every single point. Here we can see in this workspace and this workspace, and it also constitutes a particular geometry, that is a triangle. So this is how we will be developing. It has to be an enclosed area while we develop different types of profiles. Now we have seen the first option, that is the profile option. Today we are going to learn how we are going to use the profile option. So this is where we will be finding out how the profile option will be used. Again, this is the way that we are going to use. We can create a quadrilateral. Here we can see, just make sure that it has to be a closed space area. No point should have less than two lines passing through it. That is, it shouldn't be an open space area. It always has to be a closed area. It should accommodate some amount of area as well. So it will be helpful for us to make sure what type of geometry we will be developing and what type of drawings that we will be using to develop different options. Now I can just simply use another one. I can create a pentagon, or rather than different options with different here we can see these are different options that are developing here. These are only because we have kept the option of geometrical constraints on, so we can see some geometries that are being there. That is, this option highlights the parallelism between two lines. This option is there as well. So here we can see, although it has number of sides, it is still a closed area. So this is what we require. We require a closed space area in order to achieve all those impactful options that are needed to develop a particular 2D drawing. I will just simply select all these options, and once I click the delete option, here we can see everything disappears. So what if you want to delete anything, you can just simply select everything on the screen by double clicking through your mouse and then selecting everything, and then using the delete option on the keyboard, and everything will disappear. So today we are going to one by one learn the use of different options. Now we have learned how to develop a profile using the profile option. It is just a series of lines to create a geometry. The next option that is available to us is a rectangle. Now a rectangle is a particular quadrilateral. It is actually a parallelogram which has one of its angles as 90 degree, and therefore with the properties of a parallelogram, every angle of rectangle is 90 degree, and opposite sides of it are congruent as well. Congruent in sense they are of equal length as well. Here we can see, as I mentioned, the SketchUp tools does get expanded, and it highlights two aspects. That is the first point, that is the H and the V. Again, the H represents the horizontal, V represents vertical, and it is similar to what we have learned in our school days in the quadrant system. We simply have to make sure that we keep it in the right quadrant. If I keep it in the first quadrant, you can clearly see that the H and the V are positive. Whereas if I bring the pointer in the second quadrant, you can see H is negative, V is still positive, and vice versa. If I keep the pointer, that is my arrow, in whichever direction I want, here we can see clearly that the H and the V will differ accordingly. However, I will just go in the first quadrant. Let's be on the safer side and be in the positive directions altogether. We are learning the profile option, that is a rectangle. I click on the option and then a rectangle will appear. So we don't have to use the profile option to draw a rectangle. We can use the profile option to draw a rectangle, but CATIA enables us by default that we can have different options already present, so we don't have to draw a rectangle by the profile option. However, we can draw it, but there is actually no need because we already have a rectangle option that is already present there. Now, guys, as we have kept constraints on here, the geometrical constraints and the dimensional constraints, it is always important that these drawings and the lines that represent are green. Now, it is white actually at the moment because this very particular rectangle doesn't have an actual space. That is, it is not represented, and it doesn't have geometrical constraints related to it. It always has to have a relation with the center of the quadrant system, that is with the origin. It always has to have a relation. Now, there is no relation between the origin and the h-axis and the v-axis. So we simply have to create a relation, however, and make sure that this rectangle is fixed. Because if we don't give the geometrical constraints, this rectangle can be moved in whichever direction and is free to move with whatever dimensions it can be. So if we want to fix the rectangle, we always have to put a relationship between the rectangle and the origin, for which we will require the geometrical constraints option and the dimensional constraints option. Here we can see we have the constraint options that is available to us. We can just enable it by right clicking in the workspace area, and we will have different constraints available to us. First of all, if we want to give dimensional constraint, what is a dimensional constraint? Dimensional constraint is actually nothing but the direct length between two particular elements. So if this is h-axis, that is the x-axis, and this is the bottom axis, here I can clearly see choose. I can simply, for the newcomers, I will tell you that you can use the control option to select multiple elements. That is, now I will select the h-axis and I will select one of the lengths of the rectangle. Now, just simply I will go through the procedure once again. Use the control option, and here we can see we have selected multiple options. And now once I go on the constraint option, that is the dimension constraint, here we can see the dimensions now. Now you can clearly see the by default has been set up for millimeters. So 22.943 is actually the millimeter that is available to us. So you can also change the settings. Going into the settings, you can change the dimensions that is from millimeter to centimeter, centimeter to inch, different options. But here we have set it up for millimeters. So here you can see it is 22.943. Again, once you have a relation with the origin, that particular element becomes green. So which is on the safer side. Remember, any component that is green is on the safer side, and that is free to be created into a profile. Now, there is no relationship between this particular element with the origin, so we will now give a relation between these two. Remember, There has to be a length that can be enabled between two particles. Here we can see in 61.453, that is the dimension that comes up, and we can just simply select multiple options by using the control option. Here we can see now, because I have given a relationship between this line and the origin, this line becomes green, whereas this line also becomes green only because there is a relation with the origin. However, there is no relation of this line with the origin. I can just simply give a relation by choosing these two lines using the control option, and then I will use the constraints option. Remember, it is not important that these arrows intersect, and the importance of these arrows. You can keep these arrows anyway because they will not be interfering with anything that is there on the screens. Here we can see these are the options that are available to us. Again, three elements have become green only because they have a direct relationship with the origin of the quadrant system. However, this line doesn't have a relationship with the origin. So once I choose, I have to make sure that every time I choose a particular line, in the parallel to it, that is the axis that I have to choose. Now, since it is a vertical line, I always have to choose a vertical axis, that is the V. I can't choose a vertical line and then I choose this option. It will actually be a different constraint, that is, it will be an angular constraint. If you actually look, it is a 90-degree constraint because it is perpendicular. So if we want to give a length, we always have to make sure that a vertical line is represented by a vertical line, or we can actually use another vertical line as well. Now guys, as we have learned in our college days, that there are two types of system, that is the incremental system and the absolute system. The absolute system works from the origin, whereas the incremental system works from the latest point from which we can draw up dimensions. So now to give up the dimensions to this white line, I can actually use an incremental system. If I use the incremental system, I just simply have to click on the constraints and I have to give a relationship between this line and this line. Here we can see, and now this line becomes green only because this line has a direct relationship with the origin with an incremental system, whereas I can also give up an absolute system.